Hey, friends, welcome back to the Crimson Chronicles podcast, the internet's only dedicated show to Alabama Crimson Tide sports history. We're so glad you're joining us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm Rick Morton, and I'm excited to be with you here today with my co-host, Tommy Ford. Tommy, today we've got a really interesting story and a fantastic guest from one of the most fascinating eras of Alabama football history. Why don't you tell us about it?
Thanks, Rick. We have as our guest today Peter Kim, a native of Seoul, South Korea. He moved to Hawaii at age 15. He played at Hawaii for 1 year before transferring to Alabama as a place kicker. He lettered here for the Tide in 1980, 81, and 82. He led Alabama in scoring in 1980 and 81. He was part of the 81 315 Iron Bowl team and the 1982 Liberty Bowl team, which was, of course, Coach Bryant's last game. He scored the final point of the Paul Bear Bryant era at Alabama. Even after 45 years, Peter is still in the Alabama football record books. Peter, did you know that?
I didn't know that. What was that?
Okay, well, I'll tell you.
Okay.
You are 10th all time in career points by kicking with 207. You are 9th in school history and career field goals with 37.
I see.
And we welcome you to Crimson Chronicles tonight.
All right. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, let's get started. What prompted your family's move from Korea to Hawaii when you were a teenager?
Korea was a very undeveloped country in 1974, all the way to about mid 80s. And today, Korea became one of the most richest country in the world. So obviously, my family wanted to have a better life, and my parents want us to have a better education. So that was the reason why the whole family was moved from Seoul, Korea to Honolulu.
So, Peter, when you first arrived at Alabama, did you really think at that point that you would become the guy? There were a lot of guys that were competing for the position of place kicker at that point, right? Or
Right.
did it feel fairly impossible at that point?
This is a true story. When I told my parents that I was going to Alabama, they thought I was crazy because I was walking on at Alabama. I had my scholarships at University of Hawaii. I was perfectly okay, but there's something that I wanted to get away. I wanted to get off the island and go play somewhere. And my freshman year, second game of the season, we went to Nebraska, Lincoln, to play. And Coach Tommy had us believe that we could beat them, But obviously, back in the days, 1978, Hawaii football wasn't all that, So first quarter, we were down 35-0. But anyhow, I had a very good game against Nebraska. And I remember going into the stadium, everybody wore red. Really didn't click me because back in the days, I just came from Korea. I didn't know much about American football history, but I knew Nebraska was one of the better teams in the country. So when I saw the fans, it was 76,000 versus Hawaii, maybe 15, 18,000. So I figured, hey, if you're going to play, you're going to play for the best, So from the second game on, I was thinking about transferring. Back in the days, they were all straight-on kickers. And we're one of the first breed of a soccer-style kickers back in the day. So I felt like I could do it. And there was a little, what do you call that, the ball boy, provided by the Nebraska, because we were the visiting team. And then that 9-year-old kid told me, he said, I've been a ball boy here for 2 years or something like that. And he told me I was the best kicker that he's seen coming through here. So they kind of gave me a little confidence, But I looked over my shoulder to see what they have, So I felt like, hey, if he can play, I can play in this league, They kind of led me to get away from Hawaii to go play someplace else. And plus, Alabama played 78 Sugar Bowl, their goal line stand against Penn State. They really got me interested in coming to Alabama. But leaving my home, my mom basically told me, don't come back if you not succeed. So I had no choice. It wasn't about question about whether I'm going to make it over there or not. I got no place to go to, So I had to do it. We had six kickers, competing for that position, and it was a little while, but hey, you got to do what you got to do, and I did what I had to do to win the job. So, and I thank the coaching staff and players at the time. They gave me a lot of encouragements and helping and things of nature. So I was very lucky, and that was one of the best decisions that I made in my lifetime to go to Alabama. So it all
Well,
worked out.
I had a follow up to that. You mentioned soccer. I assume you played soccer
Yes,
all your life growing up.
I played soccer growing up, and
It,
I played high school soccer. That's how I got linked to football.
Hmm.
Like I said, I hardly spoke any English at the time,
mm,
but football coach Ron Lee came down to the field and said, "Hey, all your soccer balls going over the goalpost, not under." He said, "Maybe you wanted to play football, So, and he brought down the football and he put it down, and I first football I ever kicked was a 40 yards field goal, So he said, "Hey, you're on the team." So that was the beginning of my football career.
well, also as a follow up to that, you mentioned being at Nebraska. Alabama had played Nebraska in Lincoln in '77.
Correct.
I know Alabama intrigued you, but was it Coach Bryant also? And what did you see in Coach Bryant? And why did you want to go play for him?
I didn't have much knowledge about Alabama football and Coach Bryant, the history. I didn't have much knowledge to it.
Yeah.
All I knew was being an immigrant kid, knew there was an opportunity to play football because soccer back in the days was nothing. There's no scholarships available. And
Right.
I knew when Coach Lee and my brother-in-law, who was a professional, a club professional golfer, gave me encouragement and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity. Football is a sport to play in the United States, and you have a chance to play in a major college." When I got the scholarship from University of Hawaii Division One school, they gave me an indication, hey, maybe I have a chance to play. But not knowing much about Alabama football or football history in America, I contacted, because I knew I was going to leave Hawaii, I contacted USC, Nebraska. Nebraska welcomed me with open hand because Coach, what's his name? Coach Osborne,
Mhm.
Yeah. Tom Osborne.
Thomas.
yeah,
Uh huh.
Tom
Yeah.
Osborne, actually offered me a scholarship to come to Nebraska if I win the job. But on the other hand, Alabama was like careless whether I come or they didn't think I was going to show up. But they all want me to walk on, but nobody offered me a school, which totally understandable, right? Because I had to register too. So I look at the weather belt. This is a true story. I look at the weather belt, Nebraska and Alabama. I say, I don't know about Nebraska.
Yeah. Especially coming
So I
from
said, you know
Hawaii.
what? But before I came, I was told who Coach Bryant was.
Mm.
Steve Case, Steve Cash was on the team at the time, but he was on the injury reserve list. And my brother-in-law knew his friend's family. So they kind of told me what Alabama football is all about. So I had a pre-knowledge, but I didn't know it was that deep until I came. And when I first met Coach Bryant, I mean, suddenly it was a totally a different level of intensity. Just meeting him. But I mean, that's how it was. So yeah.
Peter, we're
Did I?
pretty thankful that you needed to be in the warm weather. That's
Yeah,
a
I
that.
mean, I think that was the right move, and actually it worked out best because Coach Brown always give all the walk-ons a chance at first week of the tour days. I think he spends like 3 days, give all the walk-ons a chance. They look at that. But whatever the reason, the first couple of days they had me out there, I'll start kicking 60 yards down the road. I mean, right over the goalpost. And the first day they say, hey, maybe he had a lucky day. So second day I went out, I did the same thing, kicked 62 yards, and I know exactly when to quit. I picked up my tee after I kicked a couple of the 62 yarders, and they didn't have anybody kicking that long at the time. So Coach Brian actually gave me a scholarship 2 months after that I got there. So it worked out
Wow.
better than going to Nebraska,
Wow.
going to other schools. So I
Was
can't
that the
thank Coach
year?
Brian.
The year you were redshirted, he offered you the.
Yeah, so that was like a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. I remember I didn't have a car at that time, so I ran from what you call Coliseum,
Yeah,
your
California.
dormitory, to call my folks. I probably broke the world record. I ran so fast. Those are the years that you call and you calling for collect calls, right? So your parents
Sure.
has to accept the call. Sometimes they say no, But
Well,
anyways, yeah, those are good memories. So Coach
well,
Bryant gave me the scholarship, even though he knew I wasn't going to go anywhere.
I know Alan McElroy was the place kicker in '79, right?
Right? He
And
was
and
the
and you were redshirted, and there were probably in 1980 or so there were probably 5 or 6 vying for the job.
yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Rick,
Peter, what was it like to be a specialist under Coach Bryant? What was your preparation like? How were you guys coached, and how much interaction did you have with him?
Well, we had a kicking coach play for Coach Bryant.
probably
Senior
Jack.
moment.
Was it Jack Rutledge?
Coach Rutledge was special on the staff. He was not particularly in charge of the kickers, but he was in charge of the team. And he played tight end and kicker at Kansas City. He's always around in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, Tommy Brooker.
Tommy
Tommy
Brook.
Brooker.
I mean,
Yeah. So he was the position coach. And however, I was not required to work out with the linemen, but I really liked Coach Donahue. His idea was giving 100% at all times. So other kickers thought I was crazy jumping in. And they used us as a dummy holding backs so the defense can knock the crap out of you and things of nature, because they need people, right? So I volunteered to do that. So he's a junior. I remember him. He's one of the hardest hitter that I've seen. He doesn't give anybody a chance. But anyways, preparation is we're no long. I mean, we're no different than other players, but it takes a little extra concentration when it comes to because you're the only guy out there, on a silent moment. You gotta go out and perform. So you really have to prep yourself and not getting iced out. So I finally figured it out. It wasn't under my control. Offense moving the ball. When the time comes, Coach Brian calls you, you're going to go in and perform. So might as well you go in with the confidence that you can make it. But I have to tell you, all kickers go through the same moments where you don't want to go in, because that's when you feel that way, more than 99% you're going to miss the kick. So I finally figured out that, you know what? I'm going to pull against my offense. Don't score. I want to go in and kick. That was my mental preparation before I go in.
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Well, Peter, I've got a follow up to that. How much interaction did Coach Bryant have with the red shirts?
As you know, Tommy, we get to visit with him one on one twice a year, basically. When you report, you sit down and talk to Coach Brian, and when you go home for the summer, that's when you go visit with the Coach Brian. And there might be a third time when you need an extra ticket to the bowl games. If your family's coming in and 4 tickets are not enough, you gotta go in and ask. So there's a 3 chances, especially my what you would call ratio year. I didn't have much chance to sit down and talk to Coach Brian, but he gave
Yeah.
me a scholarship. He left me alone, and he knew I was working out with the defensive line every day. So I think that kind of kept me off the side. So yeah, that was a good thing.
Well,
Rick?
folks, Crimson Chronicles is proud to partner with the National Alumni Association of the University of Alabama. And did you know that you can join the National Alumni Association? Anybody can. Membership helps support scholarships, student programs, alumni chapters, and the traditions that make Alabama special. Visit the National Alumni Association at to learn more and to become a member today.
Peter, as you said, you beat out 6 others, or I guess there were 5 others vying for the kicking spot.
Hmm.
Alan McElroy had been the kicker when you were a redshirted
Right.
freshman in '79. So tell us about that competition. How does that work exactly? When you got six kickers out there, are they looking, I guess, for repetition, for accuracy, for pressure? And I would think it hard in practice to simulate kicking
Yeah.
in a game. So how does all that work?
We had a pretty good group of kickers there, and Coach Raleigh is always encouraged that we work together and try to help each other out. I had a long distance advantage over other kickers. However, the coaches knew some guys can do it in the practice field, some guys can do it in the game situation. So Coach Bryant, during the 2 days, had us lined up like a gunslingers. Six guys line up, everybody get one chance, and the whole practice stops. I mean, offense and defense, everybody watching. They try to put you on a spot where make you feel very, very nervous. And I have to tell you, those moments are more worse than actually playing in the game, you know? So that thing went on for like about a week, every single day. So, and then they kind of, in the, what you call the beginning of the practice, they gave ratings of the each players. And I got rated at, first slot, and then you got two more guys followed by that. So and you're still competing, and I didn't know until week before the first game against Georgia Tech that I was going to be the guy to kick. So Coach Bryant kept that under the blanket pretty good. So they keep you under pressure at all times. Yeah. So that was pretty fun at the same time. But you got guys line up, it's a single file. One goes in, one come out, one goes in. I mean, it was pretty wild. And then all the players go crazy. They're pulling for their favorite guy and things of nature. So it was pretty wild.
Peter, how many of the guys that you were kicking against as you were competing for the job were soccer style kickers versus straight on kickers? Were you the exception?
We had two soccer style kickers, and there were four straight on kickers. We all were walk-ons except me. I got my scholarship previous year. So I had a little advantage, but I had to show under pressure. I did okay, pretty good during my redshirt year because I was always on the scout team kicking against the first team defense, things of nature. But playing in the game situation is totally different. I think that's what Coach Bryant was looking for. That's the reason why he had me go through with six other guys line up, and you only got one chance. So,
Man, you talk about that kind of pressure during practice, but I mean, being Alabama's kicker, that's pressure in and of itself because the fans, I mean, we remember every single kick, good or bad. How do
right.
you mentally survive that kind of pressure where there are national championship expectations every single year you're playing and there's so much that people around you place on your performance.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time after practice in dormitory thinking about in my mind game situations and try to visually draw the kick, how it's gonna make, when the wind blows, you're gonna go right center versus left center, and it's not about how hard you're kicking, but you gotta make a good contact. There's a lot of mental, in your mind, the process, how you're gonna kick, how you're gonna do things, and I finally, like I said earlier, that I finally figured it out. It's not under my control because I don't tell myself when to go in and kick. It all depends on the offense, how they move the ball, the game situations, and it's all up to Coach Bryant. But hey, might as well you go in with a confidence, say, hey, I'm gonna make this. You can't think like that, but trust me, there are many kickers, including myself, at times we felt that. You almost feel like, hey, please score. I don't have to kick field goal. I can kick extra points. But I finally figured it out that, hey, you want to pull against your own team so you can go in and kick. So that's how I prepare myself
So, in
entire
addition,
season.
I'm
Yeah.
curious because I think a little bit about kicking like playing golf. In that, as a golfer, one of the things that you're always taught is to have a pre-shot routine that's the
Right.
same every single time you hit the ball.
Yes.
And you go through that pre-shot routine, and it's
Mhm.
very much a muscle memory and a familiarity thing. Did you have a kind of a pre-shot routine that you went through as a kicker?
I always had a same routine that I usually start kind of warm up on the sideline, just running up and down the field. Every time we hit the ball on the 50-yard line, that's a sign for me to make sure I have the tee with me, and then I probably jog 15, 20 yards a couple of times, and I always get on Coach Bryant's right side and do my little stretchings on the sideline, just getting ready. And when ball goes down to like a range, like 30-yard line or 35, then I do kind of every now and then I take a swing, on the sideline. And that was basically my routine. When we go in, we had the routine where when I nod my head, I go in and set up the tee. We got 25 seconds to get rid of the ball. So Coach Brian calls and we go in and I put the tee down and I get set up and the holder looks at me. I nod my head and he has a second or two before he put up his second hand up. Once the second hand goes up, snapper usually give 2 seconds before he snaps the ball. That was our routine. So we usually needed about 10 seconds on the field once we set up.
And Peter, that's something just to point out, especially for folks that are listening to us that are a little bit younger. You talked about using a tee for
Right.
field goals and for extra points. Talk about that a little bit.
Back in the days, I don't know what year exactly they got rid of the tees, but we had an option of using the 1-inch tee and the 2-inch tees. So I use 2-inch tees, and when you use a tee versus not using a tee, there's about a 5 yards difference in distance.
Hmm.
So these days, kids are kicking so long and so strong. But then again, now back in the days, we could not use the old balls. When you use the old balls, kicking balls like they do today, you
Mm-hmm.
lose about 7 to 10 yards. Depends
Wow.
on the type of balls.
Wow.
So yeah.
Was it more difficult for the holder with a tee?
Ah, I wouldn't say so. I think it was pretty. It was I had the best holders, my career. I can't, and I tell you, good kickers coming from the good holders.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Makes a ton of sense.
yeah.
Tommy?
Peter, you were on the tail end of playing for the greatest coach in college football history. During this time, you were, as we mentioned, a part of the famous 315 game against Auburn, as well as Coach Bryant's final game versus Illinois in the 82 Liberty Bowl. And as I mentioned earlier, scoring the last point in Coach Bryant's career. What's really amazing is that Fred Singleton Jr. was a friend of mine, passed away, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. He scored the first points of Coach Bryant's
Really?
career at
Wow.
Alabama in 1958 with a field goal.
Wow.
And he was
Really?
a
I didn't
great
know that.
friend.
Wow.
Yeah, great friend, Fred Singleton Jr. And of course, his dad had played on the 30 national championship Rose Bowl team. But wow, what a great honor you had. And did kind of put those two games, or maybe even those two seasons, in perspective and what you thought about being around greatness.
I didn't know much about Alabama football before I got here, but I learned quick what football meant to people in Alabama. I know it was religious in some respect, and playing for Coach Brian was something special. And he sure did, because I still live by the lessons I learned from Coach Brian, Alabama football. The 315 games that I remember, the game pre-game, Coach Brian have said, do not play for me. You play for yourself. You win for yourself. He didn't care about the record that he was about to break. But once the game started, when we went out on the field, I still have a chicken skin going through here thinking about it. It was something very special in the air. And Lindy Patrick had an unbelievable run. And we came back and we beat them. And then you go into the locker room, right? And then you have like three different phone was set up. I really didn't think it was the presence of the United States, and
Yeah.
they were calling from the White House, and it was like, wow, this is bigger than life. And we had, like past presidents came to our practice during tour days, and we saw a lot of greatness of sports legends came to Tuscaloosa. But that game was something very different, and it wasn't more than a game. It was a totally an experience, and the air was different, Tommy. You know what I mean? I mean, it was just different feeling. But compare that to the Illinois game, it was a very sad ending for all the players, and we didn't necessarily have a great season that year. And we felt like our seniors felt that we are the cause of Coach Bryant retiring. I mean, we're
Mm.
number one in the nation like mid-season, and something
Yeah.
happened.
Beat Penn
Something happened,
State.
and we
Yeah.
lost 4 games in a row, and there's a lot to say about that. But for me, I really didn't think about that. Oh, I will be scoring the last point for Coach Bryant. That never dawned me until maybe 10 years after that I finished. And then you come think about it and I say, oh, wow, I did score the last point for Coach Bryant. At that time, I was like, wow, I'm very, very lucky. Not only play for Coach Bryant, but I did, played in the game and scored the last game, and we won that game. And then
Yeah.
once again, Coach Bryant said many times in the locker room that do not play for me, you play for yourself. And then winning and losing is gonna make a big difference rest of your life. And it did. We walked out as a winner. So I finished my career at Alabama as a winner. Had you lost that game, it may have changed a little bit of my life and positive thinking. But winning that game, the way we did win the game, Jeremiah Castillo had a great game. And, I actually had a pleasure of playing golf with a Coach White in California. And he talked about that game. He says, he didn't think the third time when they threw, knowing that he was a backup quarterback, he didn't think our defense was going to play for pass defense. And we did.
I believe it's our second podcast. We had Paula Caruth and Randy Edwards on together, and they talked about that game and how it was very traumatic to go in there knowing this was Coach's final game, and the pressure that y'all had on you
Hmm.
was. They said it was the most they'd ever experienced before because you just had to win one for the Bear. That was
That's
kind
right.
of the theme. And boy, it was cold that night. I know that.
Yep. One of the coldest night.
I was there.
Yeah,
Peter,
but that was it's a very sad moment. Even though we won the game, we celebrated in the locker room with a very, very heavy heart.
Yeah.
And even Coach Brian did look a little sad, although we won the game. But like I said, victory with a very heavy heart. But winning that game years after, we really realized what Coach Brian said. That meant a lot, carry us over what we do today.
Mm.
So yeah, that was a great experience.
so as a kicker, what was the loneliest moment that you would have during a football game?
Of course, those are the moments where we're down by two, coming down to 2 minute offense. That happened a couple times. Like I said, I'll be honest on behalf of all kickers in the United States. You come to a point where you don't want to go in, right? But I have always said, you know what? I want to be a hero. That's when you got to have a little attitude of a little cocky, confident attitude. Like, hey, don't score, man. I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna become a hero. You gotta have that kind of mindset to go in. And but you make you miss few, and but you gotta do what you gotta do, to help the team. That's exactly what I did. Those
I
are the
love it.
very lonely moments because when I started to walk, the my routine of running up and down the field, the guys come around. That's the worst time for them to come around and start talking. We believe in you. You can do it. Just leave the heck out of me. You know what I mean? But then they come and slap your helmets and things of nature. I don't know what it was. I was able to block off, and I didn't hear the much noise at the stadium. You totally go in and concentrate. and thinking, you know what, I'm going to go in and do it. I want to be a hero. I'm going to go in and kick. You got to become a little bit cocky at those moments, you know.
Yeah.
So,
That you can that you could rise to the occasion, and it took a little bit of attitude, I'm sure.
yeah. And then, one thing great about Alabama football, I missed one against Georgia Tech to tie in the game, last second field goal. And I thought I made it, but it was a little short, 52 yards or 51 yards, something like that.
Yeah.
I thought I made it, So this is a funny story, but I'm going to tell you. Like I said, in old days, they could not use the old balls like a balloon. We call it a balloon, okay? But you could use like a little older than other game balls, so we call it a fourth down ball. So the ball boys, they provide the ball to the officials, right? So nobody thought that we were gonna kick to tie the game, so they didn't put the the kicking ball.
Oh.
But I thought I made it because I thought I made it, and Alan Gray hold me out. We were celebrating, and then we saw the official go like this. I ran all the way down there to verify, but
Wow.
I came into the locker room, right? Benny Perrins and all the guys coming over to me and say, "Hey, it's not you. We lost the game as a team. Our defense should have played better." I mean, it was such a comfort feeling. It was more of a team effort. I didn't feel like I was singled out because I missed the field goal. So
Peter, regarding that game,
yeah,
it was almost destiny that we lost that game, and then we tied Southern Miss in the middle of the season. And if we had won one of those games, that Auburn game would not have been for 315.
that's
You
right.
know,
Exactly. Yeah,
I mean, the destiny of the
yeah,
Iron Bowl being the 315th win is unbelievable. The
and
fact
that
that we
is
had
unbelievable. It is
got
unbelievable.
beaten by Georgia Tech
Yeah,
24-21
yeah,
that year, and then tied Southern Miss,
yeah,
which set it up for the Auburn game to be the 315 game.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Um,
I never thought of it that way, but and the last game of the season against
Mm.
Auburn, 315. Wow, that is something else. Yeah.
yeah.
Peter, you mentioned that about just the encouraging nature of some of your teammates. As you think back, who would be some of the people that you played with that maybe folks would be surprised about them being encouraging behind the scenes, or maybe who were some of the funny guys in the locker room that folks might be surprised about?
Stedman Shealy. I didn't get to play in the game with him because he graduated my redshirt year. But watching him through the way he practiced, the way he carries himself around the players' locker room, I mean, he's a tremendous individual, human being. And also Alan Gray. Alan Gray was I played with. He was my holder, and he encouraged me so much, And when he's on the field, he gives a lot more than 100%. Joey Jones, he's another individual that gives 100%. So we all about learning ourselves individually. I mean, we get lazy at times too, but you kind of work it off of some of the players that who does better than you. And as a human being, uh, as an example, the leader are the guys that I just mentioned: Alan Gray, Stephen Shiley, Joey Jones, and these are the individuals that I can never forget. And the funniest guy that we had was a backup kicker. What's his name? He's from Jordan. He's a little short, 5'5", maybe 6, kind of heavy set. We used to call him a square. And then he played in one of the games. The seniors gets to play last game of the season.
Mhm.
Or the Cotton Bowl, he went in and kicked the extra point, and he's the only guy that was feel free to talk to Coach Bryant. He approached Coach. Everybody avoid Coach Bryant. For example, we used to go into the tunnel, right, to go to the locker room. And when you see Coach Bryant coming from the opposite end, all the seniors turn around and go all the way around the Coliseum, right? He's the only guy that walks right up to Coach Bryant and say, "Hi, Coach. How are you?"
I'm looking in the 80, is it 1980?
Yeah, he was there 79, 80, 81, I think. He played the Cotton Bowl. He kicked the last extra point. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Uh,
he was the funniest guy.
That's good.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
have a
I'll see
senior
you.
moments now because I can't remember people's name.
Well, folks, today's episode is brought to you by Tidal Towel from Whitwell Sports, the unofficial rally towel of the Crimson Tide. Whether you're headed to Bryant Denny Stadium, Coleman Coliseum, or watching from home, Tidal Towel is a great way to show your Alabama pride. Visit Whitwell Sports and use promo code 2TWO at checkout for a special listener discount. Peter, I got a question for you.
Sure.
You've been a very successful businessman for over 40 years now. Played for Coach Bryant, really count your redshirt year for 4 years. He had to have taught you many lessons. What off the field lessons did you learn from him?
You know, there are so many things that I have learned from Coach Brian off the field. He always talked about before practice, after practice, talked about life after football. Of course, I was 21, 22 years old, did not understand what he meant by life after football. He always told us that you think 2 days is hard, you try to go out in a cold world and try to earn the salary and working for a company is not an easy thing to do. That really didn't dawn me till when I got cut by Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2 times in 2 years. And when you come out of the facility driving home, you feel really nobody to really blame but yourself. It's a very lonely moment, and and then you try to go out and find a job. It wasn't easy, but all the teachings that we learned from Coach Bryant really helped us keep moving forward. We never move backwards. We move forward with it, with a positive thinking that we can do it, the confidence and things of nature, and gave me encouragement when I knock on the executive office. I was never scared to go in. Of course, you're a little intimidated at times, but then you say, you know what? I did play for Coach Bryant. I played for the best. I came from the best program in the country. I can do this. So I kind of utilize it that way. That's the reason why I created this brand called, I want to show you this cup here. I created like a 9 different concepts, and this is one of the brands, the first brand that I did. And you can see the quotes over here, expect the unexpected, quote by Coach Brian. And we have, if you believe in yourself and have dedication and pride and never quit, you will be a winner. So I printed on this my
That's
brand
great.
in
That's
Hawaii.
amazing.
So we're serving all of our core drinks with this cup. And when people look at it, they think, "Wow, what is this?" But they can put two and two together. They know that I played at Alabama, and I think young people appreciate this. I was
Sure.
hoping that I was helping the young people and people who struggles. Hey, if you believe in this, you can make things happen. And same thing happened to me. I struggled a little bit after I got released by Tampa and got into a little business and didn't do too well. It was a partnership in Memphis, Tennessee, trading cotton. So that's when I decided, you know what, I'm not a businessman. I'm not cut out to be a businessman. So I decided to come home and take a test to become a special agent for FBI and Treasury Department. So I took the test and I passed, and they put me on a security clearance stage. And I was born in Korea, so they say it will take about 180 days, 6 months. And that's when my family, my father and my sister wanted to start this brand, Yummy Korean Barbecue. And when I got in and I said, I got 6 months to kill, so I help you guys. So I looked at their lease and the things that nothing was moving for 90 days, and their due date was like in 60 days. So, you know what, I'm gonna help you. So I actually built this restaurant all on my own, hiring the contract, running the permits, and when I went into the building department, it's very difficult, but I beg everybody. I say, hey, this is my first time I do it. But it all came from Coach Brian's influence. If you want it bad enough, you're going to find a way to do it. So I learned and we did it. And we opened the store on time. And like I said, it's all about what I learned from playing football. We got it open. And first day, we said, if we do $700 a day, this was 1986. It's a big success. We opened the first store in my residential area where I graduated from high school. So I knew a lot of people. They were very excited that I'm opening a store. They gave a lot of media coverage and everything. So guess what we did first day, the 1986, August 12th, $3,000 a day. It was a
Mm.
huge success from $700 to $3,000 a day. As a whole family was involved. It was a happy problem that we had, right? And then I have six sisters. We have a large family, and we're an immigrant family, so we want really nobody was doing really really well. So the second store came about 3 months after. There was a another store that we opened in 6 months later. That was a turning point for me to stay in Hawaii. That was a major shopping center being developed. Everybody wanted to get in there. And there were a lot of veteran companies who qualifies more than our company. So nobody thought that we could get in. So anyhow, the second store was born in 90 days, and that was a successful too. But the third store was the key reason that I decided to stay in Hawaii. But in order for me to get that space locked in, I dress like in Alabama, tie, coat, and going to the leasing office, cold, knocking in. I wanted to see the, director of leasing, and then they thought that I all had appointments with him. So they said, "Oh, you have a seat." And they asked, "What time's your appointment?" "Oh, I don't have an appointment." They said, "Oh, no, he's not in." You know. So that went on for like more than 10, 12 times. Each time I leave a name and the that I will be back. So on the sixth visit, I remember I said, "You know what? I'm not gonna quit." And then, like I said, never quit here. I said, "I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see to the bottom of it." So I went back six more times, and finally I got a call from the gentleman. Egan Nishimoto. He was the leasing director. So he saw my desire, wanted to do good. I didn't have much experience. There were other companies who were a lot more experienced than we were. But somehow he saw something in me, and then he gave me a chance, and we had a huge success. And then
Mm.
3 days after that I opened that store, I got a call from Treasury Department. They're gonna place me in Los Angeles. So her name was Joanne Connor. Okay. So I told her what my situation was with the family business. I said, "I'll call you back in 90 days." But the truth of the fact is, I went to dinner with her 25 years later. So
Really?
we did get hooked up. That's
Wow.
the story of my restaurant tour business. So yeah, so I developed besides this seven other concepts. We now own seven concepts, and we own and operate. So yeah,
Wow.
I mean, did I confuse you going through the?
No. What an amazing story.
So we
Well, hey, I'm gonna.
currently own, humbly speaking, the best steakhouse in state of Hawaii. We sit about 330 people. We're located at the rooftop of the hotel, so we have a panoramic ocean view, sunset
Mm,
every night. And that's one thing that I kind of regret, that as much as Alabama football and basketball came out to Hawaii, Coach Moore, I really, he came out several times. And I look up to him very, very much. And he didn't get to come to my steakhouse. That's one of the
mm.
things that I kind of regret about. But we do have a lot of the visitors coming from Alabama to Honolulu. I usually go by and say hello to them. So
Well, as I mentioned before our interview started, Peter, my wife and son and I had the honor of coming to your house in 2002 when
right,
Alabama played Hawaii,
right.
and Jim Neighbors was there, and we got to visit with him and just had a great time. And now you've got me wanting to come back just to go to your steakhouse.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the excuse to have to go to Hawaii, right? Like I
yeah.
need to
That's
go to
right.
the best steakhouse in Hawaii.
I bring interns from University of Alabama every
Mm,
year, two of them. We
Wow.
fully paid
wow.
lodging, food, and we also pay them as well. I have to tell you, we learn a lot from these young folks from University of Alabama. This year, they're coming in on June 1st for 8 weeks. I very much look forward to have them. And in fact, the person who's in charge of operations in our company is from Alabama graduate. And she was our first class of intern that she was so smart and very, very unique. I knew she was going to be succeed no matter what she does. And I told her my company at the time was not big enough for her. I said, when you graduate, when you don't find anything really excite you, call me, right? So July of that year, she calls me. She goes, Mr. Kim, I wanted to work for you. I said, why? She goes, nobody gives me enough responsibilities. I said, do you want response? I have a planet to give to you. So now she runs, our entire operations. So she controls about almost 700 people. And
Wow.
she's a young girl and does a wonderful job. You know.
Hey, Peter, let me take you back to your playing days for a few more minutes. When you think about guys that you played with, or maybe coaches outside of Coach Bryant, who would be somebody you would point out and say they really had a shaping influence on your life? Maybe somebody who had a quiet influence and changed you in some way.
Coach Danu is one of them. When I was playing, and the Coach Moore is another person that really influenced me into the right directions and a lot of encouragement. And they were the true leaders of Alabama football. And I said it earlier, like Stephen Shealy, he's a milestone as a human being. He's someone that you would not hesitate to contact or reach out to him, if you need some help. And I know he will never would deny you. So we were more of a family than anything else. Like Coach Moore was, he always had an open arm, and I spent, a lot of time with Coach Moore, during the football season. But he always carried like tickets like this in his pocket, like 2 hours before the game. And some guy just called last minute, hey coach, I wanted to come. He dished out the tickets. It was a big old family, it's a football family. I think recent years, Coach Moore was the one that, after Coach Bryant, he kind of pulled everybody together as a family. I think that was the reason why we turned the program around 2004, starting 2004, and what football is all about at Alabama today. After Coach Bryant, Coach Saban, you know, I think it has a lot to do with the Coach Moore's leadership. I think Tommy, you can witness that, can you not?
Oh, yeah. Well, Mal was a great boss.
Yeah,
He became AD in 99 and passed away in 2013. But so I worked for him for about 15 years,
yeah,
and he was the best.
yeah. I mean,
Really.
great people. I mean, what I do today, I attribute everything what I do today to Alabama football. The education that I received from the university, Coach Bryant's influence, Coach Moore's influence, Coach Daniel's influence, and the fellow players that I had, supporting me throughout the years, and we still get together time to time. So it's a good old family that I had.
Well, nothing makes me happier to go to the A club room before a game. And, I saw you there one game last year, but to
Right.
see all the former players getting together and laughing and smiling, telling stories, and it is quite a fraternity. And every guest we've had on, every one of them talk about the bond of Alabama football. Coach Moore always used to say, you know, there's lions and there's tigers and there's eagles, but there's only one Crimson Tide.
That's right.
You
That's right.
know,
I believe that.
yeah. Rick,
Peter, did you realize that perhaps the impact that your visibility had on young Asian American athletes who were watching Alabama football and thinking maybe that they belonged because they saw you?
I coached at St. Louis High School where Tua played, and Tua and I played same high school football coach, Coach Ron Lee. And I was a part-time coach in and out of the school for about 20 some odd years. And there's a guy named Reggie Hall came to my camp, my kicking camp, I think it was 1988. It was kind of early years, 86, 88. I think it was 86 or 88. He was already at Notre Dame, but they would not give him a chance to come out and try out even because he's about 5'5". When he came to my camp, when I saw, I said, if he's at the right place at the right time, he'll play. And his heart was bigger than the 6'6" lineman. You know, you're so dedicated, but they would not give him a chance to come out and be even a tryout at Notre Dame. So Coach Lou Holtz was the head coach at the time. I knew he was very much like Coach Bryant. They're looking at the heart, not the size of the players. So I reached out to our defensive back coach. He coached under Coach Lou Holtz when he was at Arkansas. Oh, Tommy, do you remember him?
Lewis Campbell.
So I called him up, knowing that he knows Coach Lou Holtz. So I asked him, I told him about, Reggie Hall, that little kid wants to get a tryout. So he helped me get hooked up with Notre Dame, right? So we got him on the team, right? That spring, he got on the team. He made the team. He became the MVP of the spring training because of his attitude and desire wants to play and all that. The following year, he became the starter. He started in front of John Connie, all-time NFL best at the time, when he graduated.
Yeah.
He was in charge of kicking everything inside the 40 because he didn't have the distance. He was only about 5'5". He kicked 4 field goals against Michigan that year. They beat him 12-10. They won the national championship that year. And Coach Lou Holtz remembers that. And there's a big Notre Dame alumni contingencies in Hawaii. So they bring Notre Dame folks every year. And one year he was a guest of honor. So one of the guys called me and said, hey, Coach Lou Holtz wants to come up and have a steak at your restaurant. So I went up, I introduced myself, and let him know that I play for Coach Bryant. And then he goes, oh yeah, have a seat, let's have a drink. So I told him about the Reggie Hall story. He goes, that's right, that was you. And I mean, we had a blast that evening. Even his wife enjoyed it. As soon as we say Coach Bryant, they had an open arm, and that's how much Coach Bryant influenced people. And he remembers Reggie Hall winning a national championship, and he wrote me a very, very nice letter after he left. So I influenced him, and then there's another story about this another kid, same high school, St. Louis High School, 5'5" at best. And he was a kicker, and talking about someone that never quits. He got cut at University of Hawaii football team 3 times in 2 years. So when he got cut, they're only giving 1 day. So I drove up to the campus, and I met with the head coach, and I told him, I said, can you give him a week? If there is a money to be paid, I'll cover that cost. So they gave him a chance the second time in the same year, and they cut him the very next day. So what do I do? Even after I met with the head football coach, So I said, well, this is done. I mean, there's nothing more I can do. The following year comes around. That's his senior year. He comes around, rising senior. Spring. He comes up and he goes, Coach, I'm going to try out again. I said, he's going to try out again. I said, wow. But we're told to never say quit, right? But good things happen to good people. That summer, I got a call from Coach Dick Tomey. Coach Dick Tomey is the one who recruited me to Hawaii. He never spoke to me for 20 years after I left. After that, we became really good friends. After he retired. So he said he's coming back to Hawaii in charge of the special team. And by then, he and I were really good golf buddies. I said, Coach, I'll pick you up from the airport, but you got to give me 45 minutes. I'm not going to tell you where we're going to go, but you're going to look at this person. So I took him to the St. Louis High School football field directly from the airport. And he kicked 45 kicks, including 52-yarder. He made 43. And I
Mhm.
told Coach Tommy about what happened. He got cut 3 times in 2 years and this and that. And he goes, you know what, Peter? I cannot get him on the team, but have him on the sideline, always be ready to come in. So he did that kid. This is spring, rising senior. And he had a what you would call a system where first two starters, they had two kickers. Kick till you miss, right? Kick till you miss. And they both missed the first kicks. And then he called them in. He was not even on the team. He called them in from the sideline that spring. They have to stop him because he made six in a row. And he became part of the team. The summer he became the starter, kicked the winning field goal. And so I influenced a couple of guys. But that kid is amazing, you know. His name was Kenton Chun. So
So, Peter, in the adjustment to life after football, did you miss the intensity and the structure that you had at Alabama?
whenever tough situation comes up, you always go back to your basics, and you go back to what you learn on the football field. And it always have been a positive impact. And you feel like you have some backing, even though I'm not at Alabama with the players, but you always feel like there's something behind you to push you, back you up. If you fall, somebody gonna hold you up. That kind of feeling you always have. So it kind of helps me move towards the winning area rather than falling and you become a loser. So those are the positive impact that I have.
Peter, we've kind of touched on this, but even to this day, do you continue to use the lessons Coach Bryant taught you?
Absolutely
Yeah.
weak. Like I said, especially when things get tough, you always try to figure things out. But that positive influence that we have from Coach Bryant, that stays on rest of your life. I still use it every day. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well,
Peter,
Peter, this has been awesome. Go
no,
ahead.
I was just going to ask you if you could go back and talk to Peter Kim, who was walking onto the campus at Alabama as a walk on way back then for the first time. What would you tell him?
Back then, I had no fear, right? I had no fear. I just had one way. I have no place to go back to. You gotta make it, right? If I go back today and looking back myself, 1980, 1979, I said that was a pretty bold move.
Hmm.
But you know what? That turned out to be the best decision I have ever made. If I did not go to Alabama in 1979, I wouldn't be here today, what I do. So I attribute everything to the years that I was at Alabama. I was a very lucky guy. Yeah. So I thank you all for that too. So
Yeah. Well, Peter, this has been great. Thank you for helping us preserve and share these stories from Alabama football history. And we do want to come out and have some steak at your place.
Absolutely.
please
Um,
do. I mean,
Uh,
I'd love to have you guys.
well, we would love it, and we need if you're listening to this podcast and you find yourself in Hawaii, you got to go find Peter and go get a steak, right? And hey, thanks for listening and watching the Crimson Chronicles podcast, the internet's only show dedicated to Alabama Crimson Tide sports history. And for more Crimson Chronicles content, you can find us at bamahistory.com. And so, Peter, we end all of these episodes the same way, and it's really the only appropriate way to close out anything that you do for the Tide, right? We just want to give everybody a big roll Tide.
There you go. Roll Tide.
Thank you. All right. Hold on,